Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, and thank you for joining us. So I am Roxane Gérin, Interclustering and European Service Manager at Polymers. And today we are gathered to delve into the topics of circular economy and recycling of medical grade polymers. But before we start, just a quick brief overview of the context of today's session. So this webinar is organized is a collaborative effort between Polymers, the French competitiveness cluster for plastics, rubbers, and composites, and ATIM, the Irish cluster for advanced technologies in manufacturing. So it marks a milestone in our ongoing collaboration between Polymers and ATIM, which has been underscored by the signing of a memorandum of understanding last November. So using this collaboration, Polymers and ATIM identified circularizing and recycling medical grade polymers as a key sector within both the French and Irish polymer ecosystems. And that's why, together with Caitríona, director of ATIM cluster, we decided to utilize our developing collaboration to showcase the advancements made in this area in our two countries, and also underscore the joint commitment of our two ecosystems to drive to more sustainable practices. And without further ado, I will leave the floor to Caitríona Mordan, director of ATIM cluster. We will introduce a bit more the topic of today and the agenda.
Great, thank you very much, Roxane. And again, great to kind of further our collaboration as well with a very successful cluster in Europe, Polymers. So I suppose, you know, we've come together with this joint agenda. Number one, I suppose, to set the context, medical device, you know, within our both jurisdictions, you know, is growing, and trends and statistics would indicate that they're going to, the revenue in terms of medical device is going to grow significantly as well for this year, almost 18 billion in France and 1.8 billion or so in Ireland as well. So I suppose with that, you know, while that growing trend is great for our polymer processors, it also puts, you know, we also have in parallel a lot of new regulations around increases in sustainability of product and materials around polymers as well. When we look at the medical device sector, the health sector in particular, that's not without its complications as well. So there's, you know, issues around, you know, regulations around sterility, quality, and obviously safety, particularly with those products and medical grade plastics that are going to be contaminated as well. But I think there's often non-contaminant plastics as well within the healthcare setting, and ultimately they end up in, you know, being incinerated as well. So on one side we have this growth in the sector, on the other we have this drive to be more sustainable, and in between we have our polymer processors, you know, that almost are at a loss in terms of trying to drive towards CSRD reporting and more sustainable standards as well. So with that in mind, this agenda brought us together today. We want to try and explore, I suppose, both in Ireland, and share what we have done in terms of projects in this space, and really how we can drive and bring more of that supply chain together, have shared learnings and shared opportunities to tackle some of these shared challenges across our jurisdictions. So in terms of the agenda for today, we will firstly hear from, you know, the slight change in the agenda. We're going to hear from Nicolai Langatio, from the Innovation Manager in Polymers. So in Polymers, they have just commissioned a new study called EVA Plus, a study on recycling and recovering of used plastics in the French health sector. And we'll get insight into what that study is going to consist of. We'll then get insight into some of the studies led by Noel Gately in applied polymer technology here in Ireland, and also some of the challenges, I think, and the opportunities faced when trying to complete some of those projects. We'll then pass you back to Roxane, and she'll give an overview of, you know, some of the opportunities around funding opportunities, in particular to attend conferences and internationalization activities around sustainable polymers as well. And then I'll close with just highlighting, you know, maybe potentially the next steps for our French partners to visit Ireland, and where we can further discuss some of these challenges in person, and hopefully some opportunities as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Nicholas.
Yes.
So just a few seconds, time for Nicholas to start sharing his presentation. Normally you have the right to share, Nicholas. And thank you, Caitríona, for the introduction. So now I leave the floor to Nicholas Longatino.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you to talk about this study we will run. First, I will introduce myself. So I'm Nicolas Longatino. I'm an innovation manager for Polymers. So we'll talk about Polymers, what it is. So Polymers is a French cluster focusing on polymers, as the name suggested. Talk about plastic, rubbers, and composites. We have around 400 members, and to make it simple, our goal is to help everyone working together, like SMEs, big companies, laboratories, technical center. We help everyone working together on innovating projects. For the value chain of our members, so we have, for example, at the beginning, the chemists, the material manufacturers. Then we have the people we formulate, plastic formulation or rubber formulation. Then we have people who transform the materials. And then at the end, we have the RTOs. And so because we work with polymers, we are in almost every market, as you can see, sport and leisure, for example, packaging, mobility, we are everywhere. But to help all this community working together, we create what we call club. So we have a different type of club. For example, one working with a composite, one with smart plastic. But we also have one, especially for today, about healthcare. So the idea of this club is to, let's say, let people communicate together, to exchange ideas, to exchange about business cooperation, but also to respond collectively to individual needs and questions. And this is the beginning of the study. So at the beginning, people were concerned about, for example, in one world, you have hospital, laboratories, plastic industry, which currently produce a lot of plastics every day. And these plastics are not really, let's say, recycled. Usually they goes directly to for energy recovering or landfill. And on the other world, you have the plastic industry, and with legislation, they are required to increase more and more recycled material inside their own products. So the thing we had the idea that maybe we can connect these two worlds to at the same time to include plastic waste, which is produced by the healthcare industry, and then to introduce inside the recycled materials required. So this is the observation. So the idea is to make, like I said, a circular loop with these two worlds. Then we had some questions, some opportunities. For example, we know that plastic is here. I went to visit several hospitals, and you can see there is a lot of plastic there, also in laboratories. But the thing is, the plastic there, it's a really good grade. So we have something we can, it's not like a bad plastic, it's really a really good one. And the idea will be to keep this quality of plastics. And then also, there's the general trend right now with recycled materials. For example, I went to PharmaPack, a big fair in Paris last month. And as you can see, in a lot of different pharma companies, the word sustainability is everywhere. So this is a trend right now. And it means that we can, if we start doing this initiative, we can bring a lot of people together to go in the same direction. And then there is also a need for more and more recycled materials. These other opportunities, the opportunities are there. But we also have questions. For example, what type of plastics can we find in this environment, in hospital, in laboratories? Is it a good plastic that can be recycled? Is it, for example, multi-layers, which is difficult to recycle? What are the quantity of this type of plastics? Because when we talk with recycle people, they say, okay, we can recycle, but we need at least, let's say, 1 ton a year. So the quantity is important. Then what about logistic? Is there enough space and storage for people to keep plastic, to be able to recycle it? What about the collection of plastics? So there's a lot of question regarding the logistic. Then also a question about eco-sustainable. And I mean eco, I mean ecological, but also economical, because perhaps it's more relevant to just burn the waste instead of recycle. We don't know. And last thing, but the really big thing, is about regulation and legislation. What can we do? Because we know healthcare, it's a complicated world about regulation. And so what can we do? So we have all these questions. We also have all these opportunities. And the thing we wanted to do is to start a study to answer all these questions. And this is EVA+. So EVA+ means, in French, sorry for the English speaker, étude de valorisation des plastiques usagés en santé. So in English, study on the recovery of plastic waste in healthcare. So for this study, we thought about maybe divided the study in 2 parts. So the first part will be about characterization and analysis of value chain of and its challenges, which means, like, at the beginning, we need to identify all the various sources of where we can find the plastics, what is the quantity, and then also characterize the value chain, all the different members of this, let's say, value chain, to know, for example, at the beginning, we know we have hospital, but then we need also to consider who will do the collection, who will recycle the materials, what do we need, what are the different actors that do we need to make a really good and relevant value chain for that. And then last thing, we also need to obtain information on regulatory issues, like what can be done, what cannot be done. We know in France, we have some specific regulation to try to implement to be able to recycle material, to create some, what do we call it? Specific, let's say, fields for recycled materials. So we have to ask what can be done with this. Then the second step will be identification and analysis of existing recovery routes. For example, we need to know, is there already something existing for recovery? For example, is there already something healthcare to healthcare, some initiative that we can maybe copy instead of just doing something that's already been done. But we can also check about what has already been done with the healthcare products and recover in another field, like, for example, automotive or anything else. And at the end, we will also try to identify what already exists about recovery. The idea is just to copy things, to be able to maybe try new things. Then we also have to identify the barriers to recovery, to ask about every members of the value chain, what are the problems? Is there, for example, problem about, as I said before, logistics? Is there a problem about storage of the plastics, about the quantity, about what the thing can really be recycled? So we have to identify all these problems, and then at the end, to find solution that we can try to do it, and to, let's say, regroup everyone to work on these ideas. So at the end of the studies, what we want people to have is to have a, let's say, a document when you can see and know what has already been done, what doesn't work, what could be done, and then to bring together all the players of the value chain to work together and on the same goal. for the agenda, so the study will start in a few weeks now. It will last around 3 to 4 months, and it's still possible, if you want, to join the consortium and have access to the results for €1,000. What are the benefits to go in this, to participate in this study? So then, first thing, you will be able to talk with a person, with the company will do the study. You can share what you know already and what are your specific questions. For example, you want to know what are already being done, with, for example, with PVC or with specific plastics. This is something, if you participate to this study, you will be able to have like specific requirements for your needs. Then you can also ask questions to the company who will do the study. You can participate in the middle and final progress meetings. You will also be able to have visibility about your company. Like you can, with this study, you will be able to let people know that you are in this topic, and it's something really important to have visibility for your company in this topic. And then you could also be able to share contact with other different people interviewed during this study, and maybe you can work with them to try to do something with them. And the last thing, because of your participation, you'll be able to benefit the study for all the consortium. So it's the last slide, and I would like to thank also French agency, ATIM, because they are a big participant in the funding of this study, around 70%. So a lot thanks to them, and also to ADI. It's a French organization, and we work together to implement the study, and Alcimate, the company, will do the study. So if you have any questions, just feel free to ask.
Thank you. Just maybe one question, and then please write them down and we will further discuss in the Q&A session, but I just saw it, and in case you are not here anymore, Nicola, which company will lead the study is the question in the chat, so if you can answer, who will lead?
Yeah, it's Alcimate.
Okay, thank you.
They are specialized in studies about healthcare and about recycled materials and everything.
Thank you. And one last question, how to join the group?
Just contact me. If you're interested, just contact me. I have my email address and my phone number. Just contact me and then we can sort it out. But it's still possible.
Okay, and another question, and then we will be right on time to leave the floor to Noel Gatley, but what are the typical companies that are partners for the moment, at the time being?
At the moment,
is there
we
medical
have
device producers, material producers?
Yes, medical device producers. We have packaging, secondary and primary packaging producers. We have hospital as well. We have people working with recycled materials. Yes. And for the, I mean, we had interest in, for example, R&D department, but also people from the buying department, because in the next few years, to reach, let's say, a market, we will need to show what type of initiative you do in recycled materials or in environment topic. So it's important for them to do things and to try to do things to be able to have markets.
Thank you. And will an NDA be signed with the partners? This is the another question.
Yes, between all of them, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Then it seems to raise a lot of interest. I see in the chat some people that would like to join would be interested to discuss about it, how to how did you perform the study. So please, you have seen Nicolas' contact. Do not hesitate to reach him or me, and I will be happy to forward him the message. Thank you. Then I leave the floor to Caitríona for the second session. I mean, if you want to introduce quickly the speaker and
yes, I'm just checking that we have the right view there on the slides. Is that
that's
showing?
correct? Yeah.
Yes.
See it.
Great. Okay, so I'm not going to delay. Thank you very much for that very interesting insight, and I'm going to hand you over now to Noel Gately, Centre Manager for the Applied Polymer Technology Centre in Ireland.
Thanks, Caitríona, and thanks, Roxanne. Very happy to be here today to talk to you all. So, Caitríona, if you want to move on to the second slide there, if you can. So just to say that Applied Polymer Technologies is co-funded by the Enterprise Ireland and the European Union. And if we want to skip on to the next one, Caitríona, just to put us in context, so we're part of what's called a technology gateway network here in Ireland. So the network is spread across different universities across the island of Ireland, each with key niche areas. So ourselves in Polymer, and you'll see there on the map, each different location would have their own kind of unique expertise that they offer out to industry. And our remit is to work with Irish industry, but also with European partners and UK and Northern Ireland partners to provide solutions and help with R&D technical challenges that may be specific to their areas. So if you want to go on, I don't want to dwell on these slides now, and maybe we'll push on to the case study. I suppose what the network does offer is gives companies access to over 400 different researchers working across a variety of different fields. And as people will know, not all projects are standalone. There's a lot of multidisciplinary aspects to them. So the network allows us to bring in other engineers to help with maybe multidisciplinary challenges that companies are facing. So here in APT ourselves, we get a lot involved in a lot of projects around, prototyping and design work, right through to scale up and, R&D validation runs through injection molding or extrusion and other types of additive manufacturing technologies. We also have a full testing and investigation unit that tests all of the components, the materials, and so on. So if you want to push on, Caitríona. I know I'm conscious of the slight. There seems to be a slight delay on the slides. But if you want to go down to the Irish Green Labs project, and I just wanted to outline this kind of case study today. This is a project that was done in conjunction with other partners, and I'll outline them as we go through the project. But we wanted to demonstrate that we could look at taking single-use laboratory components, and in this case we focused in on polypropylene, so everything from pipette tips to vials to pipette tip boxes, all the different types of polypropylenes that's generated in a lab. We wanted to take them back, see could we fully decontaminate them, and then produce them into something viable again that could be used and tested. So if you want to go on, Caitríona, to the next one. So the goal was to circularize the material that came back from the laboratory. Can you change that, Caitríona? So a lot of our plastics, very similar to what Nicolas talked about there. A lot of the waste plastics are coming out of laboratories end up in the very same places as Nicolas spoke about. So energy conversion or into landfill. And the goal here was to see could we divert some of that material out of that kind of out of that loop and try and turn it into something that we could actually make into something useful. So our part here in TUS was around the characterization, molding, and conversion of the material. In UIG in Galway, the University in Galway, their tasks were to separate and collect this material, and then ultimately test the product that we were going to make at the end of the processing. Invitech and Novelplast got involved. Invitec have a unit that sits on site and will regrind and fully decontaminate the regrind and makes it accessible then for downstream processing. And then Novelplast got involved with the pelletization so that we could actually use a material that was workable for molding. So if you want to push on again, Caitríona. So the next slide, you just see that there's, it just takes you through the different steps. So the labs in Galway collected the polypropylene tubes and all the different types of components. They segregated them out and they developed a protocol around doing that. And that was very, very important. Giving people clear instructions on how to segregate and keep their plastics, you know, into different waste streams. You'll also see there in the third picture that there is ink and other types of writing on some of these tubes as well. So it was very important that and there is other types of clear polypropylene. So it was very important that we kept the clear and the inked separate as well. So it allowed us to evaluate what those materials did as well. On the top right there, that's after the Invitec system. The material has gone through the Invitec system and has been ground down into flake and is decontaminated using chemical wash and subsequent deionized water wash steps as well, which allowed us to bring it into pelletization and on into producing recycled pipette tips. So the next slide then will show you that we produced a pipette mold, a prototype pipette mold, and we produced recycled pipette tips. And these pipette tips then went back to the University of Galway, where they were compared with, I suppose, commercial available pipette tips that's on the market. We also, as part of the study, we wanted to understand, if you want to go on to the next slide or two, Caitríona, as well, we wanted to understand what the effect of multiple generation recycling would have on the polypropylene. So we did a 10 times simulated, I suppose, regrind, reprocess, process it into a product, and then do the whole thing again 10 times. And this is just a graphic of how we achieve that. So we put it through all the different processes 10 times. On the next slide, then we kept samples after each run, and obviously we tested them, you know, mechanically, thermally, and also looked at color, things like color and degradation of the material. But in the main, we found, you know, that okay, there is a loss of, I suppose, of color, but there wasn't a huge loss of properties, I suppose, in the material, which gave us great confidence that we could, you know, recycle these materials and they become a very valuable waste stream that for producers to use into, maybe it doesn't have to go back into a lab consumable or a medical device product, but it may be used, as Nicola said, it may be in an automotive product or an agriculture product or some other type of product. We also looked at, you know, how efficient the Invitec system was at decontaminating the plastic. We found that it was very, very efficient in terms of biological and chemical decontamination, which was very important as well when you're going on into reprocessing of the material. As I said, we produced the pipette tips and they were trialed in the lab, and they had very comparable performance. And they compare them to different types of assays that they would do within the biological labs, and they were getting very comparable results, which gave us also confidence. So we tested chemically on site here, and we compared it with the actual in vitro use in the lab of how they performed, and we've seen very, very similar results. We've seen some variation in the polypropylene, the recycled polypropylene performance over the 10 generations, but you could still say it's a very viable material even after 10 generations of recycling. There is a slightly decrease in molecular weight and viscosity and a decrease in mechanical properties, but it still was relatively stable, which is good to see, and with proved concept. The inked we've seen was a particular challenge because the inked components, because it gave the material a loss of transparency as we went through the recycling generations. So you know, the systems that need to be looked at and further research done to see could the ink be removed and using whatever way it needs to be done, or else it's diverted into a different product or processing stream. If you want to move on to the next one, Caitríona. But I suppose where the opportunities lie here is that, you know, we found that in the highly regulated, like a lab environment, and this would also translate into medical environment or into the medical device producers environment, where they're highly regulated, that, you know, we found that there was a better opportunity to educate the people working in those facilities to collect and segregate the plastic a lot more efficiently, which allows you then to have this good, you know, recycled plastic feedstock to go on and do other things with it. The segregation was key, and that education and control was key to that, and that's one of the very big learnings that has come out of this little mini study. Also, that the Waste Framework Directive applies to the transportation of the waste. So even after we had done the full decontamination, we still had to use transport companies and, you know, processing companies that had waste permit licenses and licenses to handle this type of waste. So there's an opportunity maybe to be looked at that. So can that be eased up to make this whole process easier and run a lot smoother? And we found that the personnel in the labs are very accepting to do this. We're very excited about actually doing this, that they would be able to contribute, I suppose, to making their labs a little bit greener, and that the material was going, the high quantities of materials that we're using was going back into something valuable. If you go on to the next one, Caitríona, and it's probably my last one, and then hopefully opens up some discussion, is that one of the biggest challenges we found was that for scaling up is getting access to good, clean sources of sorted plastic feedstock, and that requires that changes in the consumer behavior, but also we need further infrastructure and investments in recycling capability, especially in Ireland, but also, you know, within labs or in medical facilities or in medical device companies, that they develop these facilities to help that recycling capacity within their facilities. Especially in Ireland, there's very limited critical infrastructure around reprocessing and revalorization of plastics. It is improving, but that is adding to the increased costs. So, you know, having more easier access to those types of facilities will ultimately ease this process as well and reduce costs. We're also seeing with the growing regulatory action, you know, I think the CSRD that Caitríona mentioned there earlier on, and the extended producer responsibility regulations, that companies are going to need more recycled content going forward to put into their products, and there's a limited pool of good, clean recycled materials available at the moment. So that's going to be a challenge for companies that's coming down the track. So they're going to have to tackle this problem to be able to meet those targets and adhere to those regulations going forward. Mechanical recycling is still probably the most efficient way of recycling, although chemical is on the way. There's a lot of research and a lot of strides made in chemical recycling, but it's not at the scale, I suppose, yet of where mechanical recycling can be. So I think we need to really hone in on mechanical recycling and scale that up as much as we can. You know, chemical and biological contamination does introduce risks into lab and medical plastics, obviously. But there are developing technologies out there that are tackling that issue, and that could potentially be brought onto a medical site or in a company site to tackle that, make it easier to fully decontaminate the material. And then one of the other challenges, is the transporters and the recycling facilities currently require a waste permit license. That needs to be made easier and less of a challenge for companies who want to go down the road of recycling. So that was the Circularising single-use lab plastics case study in a very brief summary. So I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much, Noel. Thank you. So if you have questions, please write them down in the chat and we will answer them. You can also, if you wish to add the comment, you can also raise your hands and I will give you the floor. So let me just check. I think someone raised their hand. No, I don't see any hand raised at the moment, but please write down any questions, any comments, and we can answer them.
I just one question, Roxanne, for Nicholas, if that's okay. It was around the
I'm afraid,
Ava Plus. He's gone, is he? Okay. Okay.
yeah, I'm afraid Nicholas has to go jump on another meeting. I'm afraid, so he won't be able to.
Okay, I'll follow up with him by email.
Yeah, thank you. I think there is one question, right? Let me just have a look. Okay, so two questions from Manuel Pires Newport. Sorry if I don't say the name correctly, but so first question, do you have an idea of on the quantity of plastics that might be recycling in Ireland?
It's a very good question, and I think there's currently the consortium are looking at a feasibility study to try and quantify the amounts of material in Ireland, but on a very small level. The labs in UIG, the University of Galway, collected 100 kilograms of polypropylene waste in 1 week. So if you think about that in one lab, in one university, or sorry, one set of labs in one university on the west of Ireland produced 100 kilograms of polypropylene waste in a week. If you transfer that out right across the board, that's a lot of single-use polypropylene that is potentially available. Don't have exact figures, or we don't have. I think that's currently at feasibility stage, but you can infer that there is probably a lot of material that could be recouped.
Great. Okay, thank you. Second question from the same person: did you consider only lab, or also industry?
The scope of this I suppose demonstration project was only lab plastics. I know, so the role that I am in here in the APT Centre, 70% of the companies we work with are medical device clients, and we see them coming to us with all the same technical challenges. So the short answer here is yes, we did consider it, and we are considering, looking at other projects in that space. But it was outside the scope of this demonstration project. It was just on lab plastic waste.
Okay, thank you. And the same person would be very happy to discuss with you because they perform similar studies for bioproduction, which have similar problematics of hospitals. So, yeah, you will have the slides.
My email address is there if they want. Yeah, exactly. Be happy to talk.
The email is right there. Okay, thank you. Some other questions have arisen. I will just take the first one I see that was sent. So, how are the products decontaminated? A lot of medical waste go in specific hazardous waste treatment and are supposed to be incinerated. Can we decontaminate them in any other way in order to recycle them?
So if I understand it, they're asking who is the company that decontaminated the plastic, is it?
So I think the question was that hazardous, hazardous waste had to be incinerated. So they were wondering who and how were they contaminated before being recycled.
So they're used in biological research facilities. So a lot of tissue culture and chemical, I suppose, contaminants would have been on the lab plastic that was generated within the University of Galway labs. So there would have been it was in a cancer research facility as well. So there would have been highly contaminated, biologically contaminated polypropylene. And then you have also a lot of the solvents and chemicals that they would use as part of that research. So they would have been highly contaminated. The system that was used is produced by an Irish company called Invitec. So they regrind and chemically decontaminate, chemically and biologically decontaminate the regrind material through their unit. So their unit is to compete with autoclaving of the plastic currently. So the idea is, and I think Nicholas alluded to it, you generate large volumes of waste within a facility. Unless you regrind it down into regrind, you're talking about taking up a lot of space within a facility. Whereas when you grind it down and decontaminate it, you can put it store it in much smaller space and in much larger containers, which makes it easier, I suppose, to store and to ship post decontamination. That makes sense.
Yeah, okay. I think so. If the person wants to add something, they can raise the hands, but okay. So I see that they raised their hand. I will give them, I can open your mic. Normally you can speak and...
Okay, thank you for the presentation. So I'm Michael Dupont, and I'm working on LCA analysis. And yes, the question you answered it correctly. And the problem we have most of the times in those studies is that most of the waste we can't really recycle them, because I don't know how it's working in Ireland, but in France we have to go in a specific hazardous waste treatment, which is called DAS3.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if there's a way to use those materials, or if it's only on other type of material which are not considered as hazardous waste or medical hazardous waste. So I guess it's more the first answer.
It is, yeah, it is. Like it's still the very same. It's handled very similar here in Ireland as well. Currently, I suppose the idea of this project was to demonstrate that we could handle those types of materials. We got a special, I suppose, license, I suppose, to run this project and to do it outside of that waste stream and to try and prove that concept, that we could decontaminate biohazard waste and recycle it back into something that was you know, had added value. But you're correct, it's handled the very same here in Ireland. Generally, it's biohazard and it's autoclaved and sent for incineration.
All right, thanks for the answer, and yeah, I think it's a good step for the waste treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. Then there are a few more questions. So another one is how close, so this is a tough one maybe for you, Noel, so how close are we to see scenarios like the case study you show replicated in the medical devices industry?
I wish we were a lot closer. I think it's my own opinion, personal opinion, is that it's a very viable way to go with these. I think the challenge is going to be to change the behaviors within these facilities, but also in tandem with that, we need to change the regulation around how the material is going to be waste or being treated coming from these facilities. So I think we've proven a lot of the concepts that it can be done. I think there needs to be now maybe both political and consumer appetite to change the way we handle the materials coming from these facilities. And I think the projects like Nicholas outlined there, and projects like we've done here, will go somewhat towards helping people understand that this is actually a valuable resource, not something that needs to be incinerated. So it's very difficult to say how close we are. I wish it was happening straight away, because there was large volumes of material out there that could be reused. From my own experience, I've spent numerous days within catheterization labs within hospitals, and I've seen, medical devices that are packaged, over packaged, I suppose, in some instance, all going into the same waste stream as biohazard or medical waste that goes for incineration. Really good, clean packaging that could be just diverted and put into other waste streams. So I think behaviors need to change, but in tandem with that, regulation needs to change to drive this forward.
Thank you for the answer. And if I may just add that, yeah, indeed, the Nicholas, the EVA Plus study run by Polymers is also a way to think how to replicate this scenario in the industry, because the idea is to see what doesn't work, like what are the problems in terms of organizational legislation or any other type of any other aspects. Also point out what already work in the industry and imagine what could be done, and yeah, gather together the key players, so to maybe have the legislative part, but also the organizational part, the technological part gathered together to answer those issues. So hopefully we will give you a bit more answer in in few months about this question.
I do think that collaboration between the clusters, potentially there is kind of a shared funding resource that we could access as well through Europe, because I think it is about scale with these projects as well, as bringing actors across the supply chain together. You mentioned there and the behavioral change, but it also needs to be at a scale which is capable of impacting the regulation and showing that viability as well. So potentially there, where we have two jurisdictions working collaboratively to prove this case, that we might make further headway with it as well.
Absolutely, yes. Learn from each other. This is so. Some other webinars will be organized on time on those to delve a bit more on those aspects. It would be really interesting indeed. Okay. So there are other questions. Another one is for Noel. Have you looked into biocompatibility testing of the regrind PP to enable use in regulated medical devices?
No, not in regulated medical devices. So the recycled pipette tips that we produced from this lab waste went back into cell culture assays within NUIG for comparison. And we did chemical leachate studies as well internally here to see how clean, and was there any leachate that was coming off the recycled polypropylene that could affect biocompatibility. There were kind of the two steps that we used to show decontamination, but we didn't do biocompatibility studies on the recycled polypropylene.
Okay, thank you. And another question, is applied polymer technology working on other recycling projects at the moment? On other medical recycling projects?
Okay, so yes, there are other projects. I cannot talk about some of them because they're tied up with confidentiality. I suppose we're in a kind of a unique position where we have companies coming to us with their sustainability challenges, but they all have very similar challenges, which is actually kind of funny in some ways. And they all, if they came together, the critical mass would be easier to solve these challenges rather than doing them all in silos. But yeah, we have one particular company looking at how they can recycle single-use diabetes products after being used in the person's home or in the field. We have a company looking at ostomy care products and how they can be dealt with at the end of life. There's a myriad of different ways that companies are looking at, and also looking at putting regrind back into some of internal structures of some of other types of medical devices. So there is a lot of standalone kind of projects happening within companies, but it would be nice to see a much more coherent, larger project that would really tackle the root cause of how these materials are handled.
I might just come in on that as well, Roxanne. So we're also working on that project. Well, you know, we're just at the very early stages of it as well, you know, where we are engaging both the regulators and those within hospital settings to understand how we can engage almost in an immersive sense within the hospital to identify some of those items that you posed even with the AVA Plus, you know, some of those questions, and understand, you know, the volumes of waste being used in the hospitals as well. So working with Noel and a number of industry partners and others on that as well. So if there is anyone listening and in attendance that wants to get involved with that conversation with us, certainly reach out to me towards the end of after the webinar as well.
Thank you, Caitríona. And then one last question, and then we can go to the last part of the presentation. If you can answer in 30 seconds, Noel, it would be great. So do you have any plans to do a similar study on medical flexible packaging?
Yes, there are. Yes is the short answer. There are companies that are looking at what they can do with medical flexible packing. So we're in discussions with some companies around that, but nothing's up or nothing moving forward as of yet.
Thank you very much for the quick answer. Then we can so quickly go to the two last parts. I will do the presentation. I will share quickly my screen if you. So we talked a lot about recycling polymers in the medical sectors, and I wanted to quickly inform you about a project we are running. Polymers is coordinating together with 4 other European partners, and it offers cascade funding. So some specific funding for supporting a green and resilient Europe through polymer recycling. So those fundings are dedicated to SMEs. As you can see, it's on polymer recycling projects. So and aspects. So it concerns really a lot of different sectors as well. And you can see here also the health sectors. It's part of Eurocluster, which is an European initiative. I will not go through too much. And so there are different types of support to SMEs. And one who will open really quickly will be the open call on internationalization. So it's, as you can see, there are 2 subtopics, but I wanted to really focus on the first subtopics, which is to support the networking of European SMEs active in the recycling of industrial polymer waste. And the idea of this call will be to have a really short application process open to all SMEs based in EU and EEA countries, and a few other countries participating in the SMP COSME program that will be linked in the presentation of the call. So don't worry, you will have access to the whole list. So to have a quick application for them to participate to European trade fairs and networking events organized in Europe and related to polymer recycling. So it has not to be the topic of the conference can be just on polymer and plastic industries, but you need to show in the application how, like if you have a recycling project or if you want to meet with key players, key stakeholders to have a look at type of studies that Noel just talked about, or the projects that are running in Ireland, for example. So please, you can apply to this call and choose either a trade fair or a networking conference to go and show how you will take profit of this conference and this event to network on the topics of polymer recycling. The opening date, so sorry for the slide, will be on the 20th of March. I will change it before sending you the slides, and it will be open until the 20th of May. There might be a second cutoff in January, and you will see the fundings here on the last part, the fundings. So it's according to the different number of days you want to spend at this conference or this event. And we have up to 50 SMEs to reward, so please do not hesitate to apply if you want to get more. So here I listed a quick list of suggested fairs and exhibitions, but this is suggestions. You can of course come up with your own suggestion if you wish, as long as it is on the polymer recycling aspects. And please subscribe to our newsletter if you wish to get informed about the opening of the call and the content of the call. And that's all for me. I will so based on this, I will leave the floor to Caitríona, who have identified a really interesting conference that would be, for example, eligible for the French SMEs to participate to this conference if they have a recycling project, want to talk about recycling polymer aspects, and applying to POREC to be able to fund their participation to this event. So Caitríona will please let us know a bit more about this opportunity.
I find it difficult to share my screen at the moment, and I'm conscious of time. Just 1 second.
So you should be able to share now.
Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so thanks Roxanne for that. Again, if any of the ATIM members are listening and want to find out more about the POLREC call, I will have it in the newsletter. So feel free to reach out to me and we can discuss opportunities for that call, and you can get support with the application as well. I suppose in terms of maybe furthering conversations between us on this, I've just highlighted some opportunities that are coming up in Ireland. One is the Medical Technology Ireland Expo and Conference that takes place in September of this year, and it runs the last week in September. So with that, if there is interest from those of the French companies that want to visit Ireland, I am liaising with Roxanne in relation to that, and we would support then potentially with visits. It could be to visit Noel in applied polymer technology and the team, and indeed maybe other companies that are interested in this space. At the close of that week then, the Irish Polymer Group have a gala dinner, and I know some of our partners in Portugal are also interested in attending that as well. So just highlighting it as an opportunity for kind of face-to-face engagement as well, and potentially that's where you could look at some of the POLREC funding as well to support with it. So I suppose that's really it from me. I know that myself and Roxanne, we hope, with the interest expressed from today, that we could kind of bring in more themes and discussion points, even through virtual meetings and webinars going forward as well. So thanks everyone for attending today, and I'll pass you back to Roxanne to close.
Yes, thank you, Caitríona, for the last presentation, and I have nothing more to add to what you just said. Thank you very much for everyone to joining us today, and we look forward to continue this collaboration between Irish and the French polymer ecosystem on different key topics, and hopefully to see you in this conference that will be organized in Galway in September. So please get in touch with me and Caitríona if you wish to know more about this conference, or you can apply to POREC to participate to it. This is all. So thank you all for your participation, and we wish you a nice day. Thank you.
Thanks all. Thank you.